Hi, my name is James Adam Tucker, and for the past 35 years, I've been an actor, director, and editor right here in Hollywood. So today, what I want to talk about 10 reasons why an actor should identify their type. Mostly I'm talking about new actors. You're just getting into the business, you're really new, you don't even know yourself maybe what type you want to be, or people talk a lot about being typecast. So when you're starting out, you're going to be typecast. Let's get to that right off the bat. When I started out, I think I was typecast as a police officer. And it was a big coincidence because that was my first choice of a career when I was in high school. I didn't ultimately go down that path, but once I started acting, that's what I usually played all the time. Detective, a young cop, that kind of thing. Some type of authority figure. So you're going to be typecast when you're first starting out. So don't even really think about that. You're trying to get your foot in the door and show the casting directors, the agents, the producers that you are a viable talent that they can cast in any type of role. So you're going to be open to almost any type of role they see you as. So one of the things you want to do, you want to know what your type is because you want to target the right auditions. From the very beginning, you want to start out, you'll see an audition, you'll say, oh, I can play this. I can play the lawyer. I can play the girl next door. I can play the waitress, I can play the school teacher. So you want to decide, you want to find out what your type is. And one of the best ways to do that is you look online, you'll find these type surveys. And what it is, I used it in a class I used to teach where I would have the other actors in the class take the printed out form, and they would answer all these questions based on different actors. I would pair them up, and each one would fill one out on the other. And then we'd go around the room, and we'd let other actors look at it and see if they agreed with the type. So as you go along, you go out on auditions, and you start getting calls, you'll see what casting people see you as. So number two, it's gonna save you time and energy. Instead of going for auditions that when someone looks at you, they don't see you as that type of character. You don't want to waste your time and your energy applying for roles that you don't fit. So for instance, if you're 25 years old, you're not going to apply for the role of the obviously 40-year-old undertaker. That's an extreme example, but you also have those fine examples. If you are, for instance, a guy and they're looking for a 20-year-old bodybuilder, and you're not a 20-year-old bodybuilder. You sit most of the time behind your computer doing your computer work, and you don't have that type of physique. You're not going to apply for roles to waste your time and the casting people's time where you just don't fit that kind of character. Let's see. It's going to also help you start building a brand. Now, I'm going to talk a little bit about an actor and his brand later on in future videos that I'm planning to do. But a brand is like McDonald's is a brand, Burger King is a brand, Wendy's is a brand. You're going to want to build your brand where everything you do, the stuff you submit, how your headshots look, how your demo reel looks, how you even carry yourself, it's going to be your brand, your style of acting, the characters that you see yourself playing, and the characters that you work on in class, the characters that you work on by yourself, when you get an audition. I have an audition coming up. I just received it today, and it actually fits my type, so I'm going to be working on that. It's a lot of dialogue, and so you feel better about an audition when it fits in your type, your wheelhouse, a character that you could legitimately really be or play. So you can give a stronger, more believable performance when you stay on brand. It helps enhance your headshots and your other supporting material, mostly headshots and demo reels. So if you have scenes and you've done, say for instance, you've done some student films or you've done some independent films, and let's take the cop example again, and you've been cast as a young police officer, male or female, and you do so happen to be lucky enough to have some of those roles, you may want to lead with those on your reel that you send out or the clips that you use on Actors Access. If you have clips that enhance the character that you're trying to play or the type that you're trying to play, then you want to lead with those. You have headshots. I'm not saying go full, dressed up in wardrobe as far as a costume. A lot of casting people don't like that, and some do. I find over the years, I found that independent casting directors are more open to seeing actors dressed a little bit more towards the role. Most professional actors and most professional agents on the higher level will always tell you just to indicate at the role you're playing or you're going for. So if you're going for a lawyer, you wear a professional button-up shirt. You could maybe go with the tie or have the collar open. You know, these all seem like minor choices, but it really makes a difference when you're an unknown commodity and the casting director is looking for someone to play the attorney, the young attorney, and you're dressed in a t-shirt with a band on it. You know, they're going to just go right past you. So you want to have a variety of headshots that indicate different roles that you could play for. It improves your confidence in auditions. If you walk in and you know that most people see me as a doctor type, and this role is for a doctor, so your confidence is generally going to be up higher than opposed to you going in for a role that you don't know anything about, or you don't identify with that type of character. So when you go for a role that fits you and you have done the work to realize, what is my brand, what is my type, and again, I said real quick, I want to jump back. You might want to have other people that other fellow actors type you, help you type. Like I said, there's documentation you can find all over the internet, and it will help you gear people to tell you, what do I look like? What do I look like to you on first glance? Let's see, it's going to help you stand out in a competitive market. We all know this business has a lot of competition, and if you have more headshots and more supporting material, like maybe a reel or clips that you've done work in, and they're leaning towards the role that the casting director is trying to cast at that moment, that might be able to give you that little bit of edge. And another thing that people do with their supporting material once they are on brand, I think I talked a little bit in a previous video about using social media to make connections. Nowadays, it's harder to make those real in-person connections, but you can use social media to follow casting directors, to follow producers, and see what they're working on, And sometimes casting directors even have areas or emails that they can tell you, send a submission here, So you want to have that stuff ready that sticks with the brand that you are. Once you know your brand, you're going to stick with it. And again, I'm saying this is a lifelong career. This could be a lifelong choice of a brand that you may have. I don't know if you've heard it, but I've heard a lot of actors who are very successful. They talk about being typecast, and they want to change their brand. And that's something that you can do if you're lucky enough and talented enough to make it into that list of actors who are called for different roles. You'll notice there are a lot of character actors who are always called in for the same type of role. Maybe it's a bad guy, maybe it's a crooked lawyer or a crooked attorney. And there are even some A-list actors that are always called in for the same type of role. Sometimes people talk about actors who are, A-listers, big-time actors, and they say they always play the same character in every movie. That's because that's what they're good at, and that's what we as the audience expects them to do. We want to see them in those roles. And sometimes you'll notice actors who try to break out of type and do a different type of role or different type of character. They're just not believable. I mean, not to say that they're not talented enough, but there are very few actors like a Gary Oldman who can get lost in a character. Sometimes I'll watch him in a film and I won't know till the end of the film that was him. He might not be the lead character because he's so able to adapt to a role. You don't even notice him. He can be different depending upon what the role is. And that's talent. That's real talent to be able to do that. Not saying that the other actors who play the same character all the time, they're talented also, but they know their brand and they stick to their brand. Just for instance, like I said, McDonald's is a brand. You don't want to go to McDonald's and ask for a Big Mac and then you get something that tastes like a fillet of fish because this restaurant does it different. If you know what you're expecting, that's what you want as far as the brand goes. And as far as actors knowing their brand, you stick to it. It gives you that confidence to, again, like I said, to stand out in a competitive market. It also guides your career decisions. Let's see. So you may be saying, okay, let's take the lawyer again for an example. I get cast in all these lawyer parts. Why do I get cast in all these lawyer parts? And those are the auditions I get called out for. And so you may want to look at that and say, okay, look, let me lean into that. Let me lean into what people see me as. they're going to cast me as a lawyer. I'm going to be the best lawyer, and that will give you, again, that confidence that can be used in an audition because you accept your brand. You're not fighting against it. You're not fighting against your type because you want to play the biker bad guy, or a woman who, looks more like the young mom, and she wants to play the rock star, and if that type doesn't come across when people look at you, they're going to have a hard time believing that you are that character. So again, the casting directors, the agents and the managers, especially when you're starting out as an actor, soon as you walk into their room or as soon as they look at your tape, they look at your self-tape, they want to see that character that they're trying to cast. And so when you get an audition, you want to lean into that. If that's your type, you want to definitely lean in that because that gives you that little bit of advantage that some of the other actors they called in might not have. So find out what your type is. Also, here's another thing that's just going to align with industry expectations. That's the same thing about leaning into your type. Find out what your type is and lean into your type. You want to get those doors to open for you. You want casting people to know that if I send this actor or actress in, they're going to do a believable performance. Nowadays, it's mostly all self-tapes. I'm starting to get, like I said, I'm here in Hollywood again, and I'm starting to get some in-office callbacks, which it's a pleasure to go on those. I mean, at the beginning of my career, that's all we had. We didn't have, obviously, remote taping and this kind of stuff that we have nowadays. But getting the in-person callback is your goal these days. If you're in a major hub, you can get that in-person callback. And the great thing about an in-person callback is that, like I said, you're leaning into your type. You've accepted it, and you're giving that performance. You're being the best of you for this performance, representing that character. You may get a redirect, and that's the beauty of being in the office. They can say, "Oh, we like what you're doing, but can you do it this way, or can you try it this way, or can you slow it down?" So those in-person little tips and hints that you may get from a casting director, or even sometimes if you're working on an independent film, or even I've went in on major films and the director was there and they may give you some direction. And sometimes they may be doing that. Here's a little behind the scenes tip. They may be giving you that direction just to see if you can do it. Because the worst thing, and this is me putting on my director's hat, the worst thing is having an actor who's going to argue with you on the set. I've been in that situation. I think I talked a little bit about it in some of my earlier videos, but that's something I always go back to when I do these videos. I love to tell the stories about being on the set so actors can see what really happens, why decisions are made, why choices are made. But again, in the casting element, if they ask you to change something, you don't have to throw away everything that you've done. You want to take what they gave you and layer that on top. So again, knowing your brand is very important. Knowing what people see you as when you're starting out is very important. So find out how you can talk to other actors, talk to family and friends, and see how people see you and lean into that brand. And that will also help you maybe get some of those doors open that are always hard to get into. Thanks a lot. I'll see you in the next one.